Hi there, Joe Shannon here with Jon Svitak. Our law firm, Shannon Law Group, helps people in the vaccine injury compensation program. How you doing today, John?
Good, Joe. Thanks.
So one of the things I want to talk about is SIRVA, S-I-R-V-A cases. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So SIRVA stands for Shoulder Injury Related to Vaccine Administration. And it's the most common vaccine claim we see both in our firm and that's filed in the program.
When people get these shoulder injuries, what type of symptoms are we talking about?
So what happens is the vaccine is administered usually in the right or left shoulder. They try to do is insert it into the deltoid muscles in your arm. Sometimes the vaccine can be administered either too far left, too far right, or too high up. And what happens is the shoulder joint becomes inflamed as a result. And that can manifest itself in many different ways, but usually it's bursitis of the shoulder. It can involve some tendon inflammation, some ligament inflammation. And you have, your typical shoulder injury symptoms: reduced range of motion, pain that should be evident within the first, 48 hours following the vaccine. And then these symptoms persist for a period of 6 months to a year to indefinitely.
You've seen some cases where somebody had a permanent injury because of this, huh?
We've seen clients that have residual symptoms even when their case is ready to be resolved, and it's just a permanent injury that they're going to have to deal with.
So in these cases, is it the track to go after the person that gave them the vaccine?
No, and that's why this vaccine injury compensation program exists. It's to protect those medical providers and administrators, which are oftentimes nurses or pharmacists, from lawsuits, civil lawsuits alleging some kind of negligence. The program is there as a no-fault system. As long as your injury meets the criteria that they look at, then you're entitled to compensation.
Why would they want a law firm involved like us?
There is some complexity to these petitions. You have to allege certain facts. You have to gather all the relevant medical evidence, and you have to draft a petition that fits the criteria that they look for. And there's no reason to not hire an attorney, because the fund that pays clients for their compensation also pays attorneys for their time and their expenses. So, petitioners are highly and strongly encouraged to find an attorney to help them.
So let me get this straight. No downside for filing because the client doesn't pay a penny for costs or for fees because it comes out of the amount that Big Pharma's already paid to this fund, right?
That's right, yeah. So the same fund that pays the client pays the attorney. You'll, at least from our firm, you'll never see a bill, you'll never see an invoice, you'll never be asked for a retainer. All those things, we petitioned the government at the end of the case.
So one thing that I was reading about last week, which was kind of disturbing, was that the Health and Human Services wants to get rid of compensating people for these shoulder injuries. Maybe you could fill us in on that.
The Secretary of Health and Human Services is in charge of running this program, this vaccine injury compensation program. And from time to time, they can propose rule changes to the program and the vaccine injury table. In other words, the vaccines that are covered, the injuries that are compensated. And actually 3 years ago, they added SIRVA to the table. They recognized it as a common vaccine injury. And as a result, we saw an influx of clients and patients alleging these SIRVA cases. And if you ask me, that's why they added it. It's so that these petitioners, who in many cases didn't have any other recourse, they can't find an attorney for a med mal case, this is the best place for them, this vaccine injury compensation program. Now, 3 years later, for reasons that are somewhat unclear to me, the Secretary is now proposing to remove SIRVA from the vaccine injury compensation table. And what that means would be petitioners who get injured in their shoulder from a vaccine and file a petition and meet all the requirements are no longer entitled to a presumption that the vaccine caused the injury. Instead, they'd have to prove that the vaccine actually caused the injury, which can include hiring experts, and it makes the case more complicated, and in some ways, it precludes them from compensation.
Sure. And so one of the things that I really want to make sure that folks that are looking into this understand is that the rule change is proposed to take effect in mid-January of 2021. So what they're doing is they're honoring cases that are filed before January 2021. So it's important that if folks have these types of injuries, that they put the claim on file. Isn't that right, John?
Yes, typically there's a 3-year statute of limitations for these claims, but for SIRVA, now we're seeing, January is really the cutoff date. So if you think you have one of these injuries, or you had one in the past, now is the time to investigate it and get it on file as soon as possible.
So one of the things that when our law firm decided to handle these types of cases is that we want to make sure that not only we're handling these cases, but we're being an advocate for people that have been injured. And so one of the things that we want to do is make sure that we try and stop this rulemaking that's done by HHS. I know that there's a number of people that want to stop this. What are some of the things that people can do as far as the public to make sure that this rule change doesn't take effect?
So right now, the notice has been published in the Federal Register by HHS. Now there's this period from now until January of 2021 where it's published and it's made available for public comment. Us as attorneys, we're part of the Vaccine Injured Petitioners Bar Association, and we're organizing, doing everything we can to prepare a coordinated response to this proposal. We also want to hear from people that have had SIRVA, have gone through this type of injury.
I wanted to alert people that there's information out there for folks that have SIRVA as well as other types of injuries. That Jon just wrote a book that's going to be published in the next couple weeks. In fact, if you go to our website at shannonlawgroup.com, you can find a few of the chapters on that. Tell us, Jon, what exactly is in the book?
As I got more into doing these cases and talking to folks who've been injured by vaccines, I found that number one, they never even knew this program existed. Number two, they didn't know how it worked or what to do when they got injured by a vaccine. So what I wanted was to write a book that's just informative in nature. It's a resource for people who are unfamiliar with the program, unfamiliar with how it works, who to call, who to talk to. I hope it's just a resource for people to gather information and make more informed decisions when something like an unfortunate vaccine injury happens to them.
Well, great. Well, Jon, thank you so much. And make sure that you check out Jon's book, but you'll want a copy of it, and we'll be glad to send it to you to give you more information.